Amante Flamejante tells the story of a respected father who falls for his son's fiancée and watches his perfect life spiral into chaos. It's not just about betrayal, it's about buried desire, silent guilt, and the cost of pretending to be someone you're not. This isn't just a movie summary, it's a deep dive into love, obsession, and the quiet destruction we bring on ourselves. Stay with me. This story gets under your skin. Stephen had what most people would call the dream life. A polished career in politics, a beautiful and supportive wife, two well-mannered kids, and Sunday lunches that looked like something out of a magazine. To the outside world, he was the blueprint of success, steady, respectable, even charming. But here's the thing. Sometimes the most perfect lives are just the best acted performances. Behind Stephen's composed smile was a man quietly suffocating in his own routine. And then she walked in. Anna wasn't loud, she didn't make a scene, but the moment Stephen saw her at that formal dance, tall, poised, mysterious, something cracked inside him. Not in a dramatic, movie-style, slow-motion kind of way. It was quieter than that. Like a match being struck in a dark room you've gotten too comfortable in. She looked him straight in the eye, not seductively, but like she saw right through him. And that terrified him more than he'd ever admit. Now, Stephen wasn't some reckless teenager. He was a grown man with a career, a reputation, and a family that counted on him. But desire doesn't send polite calendar invites. It shows up unannounced in stolen glances and in the quiet hum of what's missing. And for the first time in years, Stephen felt something real, something dangerous. It started small, a lingering thought, a quiet ache. But those are the seeds, aren't they? The ones we pretend we can ignore until they bloom into something much bigger than we're ready to deal with. And little did Stephen know, this wasn't just temptation knocking. It was the beginning of something that would unravel everything. You know that moment when a bad decision doesn't just haunt you, it starts breathing down your neck. That's where Stephen found himself. What began as a hidden spark with Anna turned into a roaring fire he couldn't control. But the worst part, that fire was now sitting at his dinner table, holding hands with his son. Martin, young and bright-eyed, introduced Anna to the family like she was the best thing that ever happened to him. And to him she was. He didn't know the woman he loved had already crossed a line with his father. Stephen, stuck between guilt and desire, could barely hold it together. Every family gathering became a performance. And Anna? She played her part like a professional. Polite smiles, calm tone, eyes that spoke volumes only Stephen could understand. The deeper Martin fell in love, the more Stephen unraveled. It was jealousy, sure, but it was also something darker. Possession, regret, maybe even shame. Watching his own son kiss the woman he couldn't get out of his head was a kind of slow-motion self-destruction. He started pulling away from his job, from his wife, from everything that once made him look like the man who had it all together. But here's the thing. When you build a life on lies, even pretty ones, eventually, the cracks start to show. The more Stephen tried to control the situation, the more it slipped through his fingers. And Anna? She wasn't waiting around to be rescued. She had her own shadows and her own reasons for keeping the game going. Because sometimes the people we fall for aren't running from us. They're running from themselves. And that's when the story takes a turn most people aren't ready for. It all came crashing down faster than anyone expected. One mistake, one forgotten key, one wrong moment. Martin showed up at the apartment Anna had secretly rented. Maybe he was just curious. Maybe he was starting to sense something was off. He opened the door and saw it. His own father tangled in sheets with the woman he thought he'd marry. There are no words for that kind of betrayal. No warning signs loud enough to prepare a son for that. Martin didn't scream. He didn't hit anyone. He just ran. Out the door, down the stairs, and into silence. The kind of silence that only tragedy can explain. When Stephen found his son moments later, his body broken on the pavement, time stopped. Everything that had been hidden in the dark was now lit up in the worst way possible. Anna disappeared. No grand farewell, no apology, just vanished. Stephen stayed, but not as the man he once was. The scandal destroyed his family. His wife couldn't even look him in the eyes. And the weight of Martin's death never left his shoulders. He had chased passion, thinking it would set him free, but it only left ashes. And still, deep down, a part of him never stopped longing for Anna. Even after everything, the memory of her lingered like smoke, the smell of a fire that once burned too bright. He watched her face sometimes on TV screens or in passing reflections, wondering if she ever looked back too. Wondering if he was just a chapter in her chaos, or if he had truly meant something. But that's the thing about forbidden love. It never stays buried for long. In the end, Stephen didn't just lose his son. He lost the image dearest to him, the man he believed he was, the respectable father, the loyal husband, the man who followed all the rules. And maybe that's the most painful part, realizing the version of yourself you worked so hard to become was never really you. What Amante Flammehante shows us isn't just a scandal or a love affair gone wrong. It's a mirror, a hard, uncomfortable look at what happens when we bury our desires so deep that they come back twisted, when we trade authenticity for appearances, when we ignore the quiet voice in our chest, the one asking, is this really the life I want? We all have our own version of Stephen's story, a path we followed because it was safe, expectations we tried to live up to. But the truth, desire doesn't care about your resume. It waits, quietly, until you either confront it or let it destroy you. And while this story ends in silence and loss, maybe it's also a warning. Not to chase every spark, but not to sleepwalk through life either. Because the real tragedy isn't just what Stephen did. It's what he was willing to give up just to feel alive again. If this story hit you in any way, made you feel, think, or even question something in your own life, leave a comment. I read every single one. Tell me, was Stephen a victim of his own repression, or the villain of his family's downfall? And if you're into deep human stories that go beyond the surface, subscribe. There's so much more I want to share with you. Hit that like button to help this video reach more people, and stay tuned for the next one. Some truths are uncomfortable, but that's what makes them worth exploring. Until next time, take care of your heart and don't ignore the quiet voice inside it.